We are spread all around Europe. I come originally from Berlin, but we also have like offices in Munich, Stockholm, Helsinki, Tampere, and London. And Futurize is originally Finnish. So we see ourselves as digital agents that can help our customers to change their business, to change their structures. And this is how we like to see a little bit ourselves. So that's what we do. We work in integrated teams. We have like business developers, engineers, service designers, and designers working all together to try to create a culture of innovation within the companies and to create new digital services. And that's exactly what I'm talking about today, like how this works or not when you mix all of these three practices in the same bucket. But first, I want to make like a retrospective of the history of the internet, because it's quite an evolution and it's changing quite rapidly. And it's nice to understand where do we come from and to understand where we want to go. So, from the first email sent in '71 to nowadays you can control your home, your car from your smartphone or from your wearable, it's quite a big evolution. It's probably one of the fastest in terms of technology. Like, just the fact of sending an email was back like a couple of years ago, and now you can control your smart home from your phone. The speed of evolution was quite fast, and I think we are on the point that we are suffering from growing pains, and we don't know exactly what are the best practices and where to go, and we are making a lot of mistakes in between. So this is a framework that trained researchers use to categorize the different phases of the internet. So the first one is the web of content, which you basically are just on one hand of the spectrum. The second one is the web of communication, when you can start to communicate with people all around the world. Third one, web of context, which is about immersive experience and immersion. And nowadays we are here, the web of connectivity. Everything is connected, so Internet of Things. The next one will be the web of thoughts, cyborgs and stuff. And we are there as well, more on the underground side of it. So, if you look at the web of content, you can say that radio and TV was web of content. It was basically a distribution channel that you were just on one hand of the spectrum. You couldn't too much interact with that. Until email popped out. So Ray Tomlinson, the guy who invented email, started to create a two-way communications in a web, in a network. So you started to have like two-way communication. But the real part of the web of communication comes with chats. Like, I grew up with this software. This is a big part of my youth, is like having access to everyone in the world, or everyone is connected at least. Coming from a small town in the middle of Portugal, lost in the mountains, it was quite refreshing to have access to people all around the globe and just vent and know to get people. So this empowered people to communicate, to discover other things, to meet other people, to get other points of view. So they call it the age of empowerment. Then comes the web of context, so immersion and Second Life, World of Warcraft, mostly started with the gaming industry. It can't get more real than that, when you have people dying in front of the computer or people attending to funerals online. So web of immersion is about like getting into a digital world, like Second Life, and sometimes neglecting completely your biological needs in real life. Nowadays we are on the web of things. So everything is connected. You have devices that are connected to the internet, even the most ridiculous ones, but we live on the era of connectivity, and we are still exploring different ways how to work for this connected world. And that's the next step, the web of thoughts. Although trained researchers say that this is yet to come, is actually already in practice. So Neil Arbison is an activist, is a cyborg activist and founder of the Cyborg Foundation, and is actually from the UK, and as far as I understood, he has cyborg in his official passport. So he has an antenna for several years connected to his brain. It started because he was colorblind. So he wanted to develop an interface that will allow him to see color as a colorblind person. He suffered from a couple of iterations, and nowadays the antenna can receive calls, send vibrations to the brain, and give some other pieces of information to him. So we are there. His partner, for example, is a woman who has like a couple of sensors within the body connected to a small plate that is connected to real data APIs for earthquakes, and she makes artistic performance based on the earthquakes that are happening in real time. So we are already there, not in a very official way, but we are there. So what I want to say with this retrospective is that the internet has changed dramatically. Like a couple of years ago, I was just sending chat messages and paying like huge phone bills because I was spending way too much time in dubious sites. But now the internet is all around us. We all work for the internet. I never thought about that. I have a failed career as a horror movie director. So, as designers, things also change. Because we are not pushing pixels anymore. I come from a very classic fine art background where it's all about the technique, it's all about the analog and your style and so on. And then you come to the digital part, which your ego as a designer is put the part and you need to solve a problem. And most of the time you are just pushing pixels and designing interfaces and so on. But nowadays, this is way beyond. We are designing physical services. We are designing services that mix the physical reality and the digital reality. And that starts to be challenging. Because even for industrial designers, this is tricky. Because, yes, they are used to develop hardware, which is the hardest part on IoT, or one of them. But if they design chairs for the last 20 years, what does it mean to design a chair with a chip inside? So this changes a lot the mindset of design. And also, a person who's just used to design for the screen will have a very hard time to understand, like, how is it to design for the real world and for the physicality. But also, software has changed, and new paradigms has changed. Like, back in the days, that was your software. It comes in a box, in a CD, distribution is offline, you can do many updates. Definitely, open source was a little bit out of the picture. But nowadays, developers and engineers, they have like free distribution service like Google Play and Apple and so on. So the distribution is no more physical. Your software is in the cloud. It can be updated at any time. It can be changed. And open source also changed the way developers collaborate. And our software became more democratized and more social to everyone. There is like a lower threshold to start doing software. And that also comes from open source. And as well, another one that is being one of the major problems or challenges within projects is like, and I think we all know, is integrations. Now you need to integrate with APIs and third parties and login services and so on. When your software came in a CD, that's it. That's in a black box. So with all of these technologies, like VR, robotics, hyperlocal, artificial intelligence, this brings a lot of new challenges. Designers are not designing the way they used to design, and developers are not developing the way they used to develop. And more challenges are coming. And let's be honest, this is new territory for everyone. Probably for engineers, super hardcore engineers, AI and big data and Internet of Things has been around for a couple of years, especially in the big industry. But for the mass consumers and for the regular Joe nowadays entering this industry, this is very new territory. And that also brings a lot of challenges. So I want to give an example. I want to start from where I work from. So at Futurize, we work designers, developers, engineers, users, business, all together. That's the perfect project. We don't have like silos. And I do like to work like that. So we have a process, like any agency. We have, let's say that you start with the business idea or the business need, and then you go to a service vision sprint, where we call, this is a phase that can take days or weeks, where we have like the tech team, the design team, the business team, all together, working with the customer and the final users to try to understand what's the problem we're solving and how are we going to solve this, and come up with a vision that covers these three topics: tech, business, and design. And we come up with a vision that might be a vision for the next 5 years, and we aim for the first MVP. So we can launch and start iterating and learn from that. But this is where the magic is supposed to happen. When you have like the business guy, the designer, your user, the engineer closed into a room or making research, but working together. This is where the magic is supposed to happen. And we normally like to picture like this. Very stock photo, very shiny, everyone super happy. In reality, it's more like that. And that's my favorite engineer. And this is a daily work, to be honest. Of course, it's a little bit exaggerated, but this is our daily relationship. And this makes me think, like, why is that? Why do developers and engineers and designers have a hard time to work together? Because I certainly did. Coming from a very design niche agency background, entering a tech company, and starting dealing with developers, not pretty. But over the years, trying to understand like why we do not work, why don't we get along, and I have my opinions, but I also did a survey in Futurize. So we are more than 300 people. We have enough developers and designers to get like a proper sample how things are working or not. And then we analyze this data and trying to understand like what are the reasons. And the top reasons are quite basic, to be honest. The first one, is respect, or the lack of it. Even in a company like Futurize, for example, which is very open, very collaborative environment, and people are encouraged to work together and to merge the practices, you deal with people, and you deal with individuals. So certainly there are going to be clashes, and the clashes starts with respect. The second one is lingo. I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand what you try to say. Both sides. So we made the same survey to designers and the same survey to developers, and then we just compared. The third one, mindsets. Mindsets is a very tricky one to change. And I have 3 stories to illustrate all of these points. And finally, music taste. It's just a big difference between what designers hear and developers hear. I used to be a black metal fan, not anymore, but I can still understand that part. But we can solve this, so that's why everyone uses headphones and we don't have like public speakers, because otherwise the environment in the room would be very schizophrenic. So, for respect, I think the biggest lesson is for both sides. It's don't be an asshole. It's just simple as that. This is 2 quotes from the survey. And engineer is talking about designers. Engineers are not taught what designers are good for. If you don't know what their value, it's hard to respect them, right? Designers, trust. They don't trust me. They don't trust as a professional. Designer talking about developers. And this was quite constant in both of the surveys. So, small story of me being an asshole. This is Eric. Eric is an iOS developer. We started to work together in a project of a radio app. We are both passionate about music, so we have our opinions. And I was the main designer on the project, he was the main developer. He was constantly challenging my design decisions, but all of them. And not in the sense that, oh, I cannot program that, or that is going to be too complicated. No, it's kind of, why do you do it like this? This is the better way. It's like, at a certain point, I need to be an asshole, and I say like, look, you are the designer, You are the developer, you code, I design, let's establish a rule here, and I don't want to hear your feedback. Not the right thing to do, obviously. First of all, I made an enemy. Second of all, he was kicking my ass and putting better design decisions than mine. So that was like a very humble lesson. Having a developer talking to me, like challenging my designs and making better solutions than me, that was a very hard punch in the ego. And we designers tend to be like very egocentric and put down developers, but this was a very humble lesson to me. Oddly enough, Eric now is a hybrid. He's one of our UX designers, and he combines pretty well development and UX. So that's the next step, right? That was quite a slap in my face. Lingo. Lingo is just about communication, getting out of your silo. So, and both, like 2 quotes. Engineers talking about talking about designers. I can't break down techie stuff. They don't get it, even when I speak in a very simple way. And designers have like this super hard time, like they don't understand the technical stuff or the lingo, which is tricky. So another story. This is Lucia. Lucia is an Android developer, and we were working on an Internet of Things project, which was a smart meter that you could connect to the internet and give you data from your energy consumption. But the hardware was still in development. There was a lot of technical uncertainties, big problems with backends. So it was a very technical project for a designer to be in. And at a certain point, we were trying to figure out the setup of the hardware itself and how the user would do. And of course, me, designer, I designed like a nice, beautiful journey, like the perfect thing for my user, you know, like, here you go. And she goes, nope, it's not going to happen. Because this and that and that, and have this problem, and the backend and React Native, blah, blah, and protocol is like, what? I don't get it. And she was throwing me like black voodoo, techie black voodoo, and I was just sending unicorns and rainbows, and we were not kind of communicating. So what she did was, okay, how can I explain you the technical problems we are having so you can understand it? So she picked up the favorite toy of any designer, Post-its, and she started mapping the whole journey from my side, so how I would see it as for the user. And she started mapping all the steps from the backend side. And she started like, look, if you want to do this system cannot do that. And she explained like I was a 3-year-old. And after that, it's kind of, okay, now I get it. I respect you. You are not being a pain in the ass to me just because you don't want to code or you want to solve the problem. There is like real problems behind. But she needed to come to a level which I could understand it. And for me, it was quite revolutionary to see a developer using a design method or design thinking, let's say, to explain something. So we can all profit from the tools of each other. Another part is trying to understand, like, why does this matter to you? Why does your user needs just 1 step and not 4? That will be much easier for me to code. Or what do you value? So, for example, engineers have a hard time to understand what's important for designers. Is it pretty that they are looking for? Is it useful? Is it useful and pretty? Is it just shiny? So they do have a hard time to wrap their heads around that. And designers do have a hard time to understand more technical processes, and especially how a developer thinks and what's important to them. So at this project, we were having a problem with the PO, the product owner, and one of the main developers, and especially because it was like a major project for developing like a bunch of websites in a month with a lot of integrations. And we did a lot of user research and user tests, and the users were asking for these kind of features and these kind of flows. And the PO said, no, I want this way, and so on. And the developer goes, no, I don't want to code that way because that will take too much effort. And the value would not be delivered. So yeah, okay, PO, developer, let's go make some user testing with us. And you listen to your users. And in that way, we made them experience what is actually important from the design point of view. And they kind of understood, okay, so it's fine. I can spend like 4 more days coding this part because I see the impact it has on the people of for the service that I'm creating for. And also the PO changed a little bit the priorities because he understood yeah, okay, I'm wrong. People want that. So it's very important, but I think this is a little bit more than developers and designers. It's very important when somebody in your team doesn't get the value you want to deliver, just put them in the place to show them and to make them experience what is really important, especially from the user side. So, mindset. That's a tough one. That's what developers think we are from. Designers are from Mars. I don't get them. After working these years in technology and working on a daily basis with engineers and developers, I think the main problem is exactly this one. Designers do have a hard time understanding and dealing with the technology, and most of us are allergic to it. And VR is not a technology per se. Like, we need to go a little bit more deeper to do something with it. And engineers have a hard time with design processes. They are super allergic to these guys who come with post-its and, yeah, let's brainstorm and coming up with ideas. They don't get that part, as we don't get the other part by default. So, a personal story here. This is Paul and me a few years back. My first project at Futurize was an IoT project out of the cloud, hyperlocal, using mesh networks and beacons that will deliver content on the right time and the right location in completely privacy. That was a lot to understand. And this is me and a super hardcore engineer working for 2 months or 3 months in a room. I gotta say that was one of the most violent moments of my career. We were fighting each other every day and almost like beating ourselves up. I wouldn't understand anything about the technology, and he couldn't downsize it or downsize it for a matter to understand. And I was like the typical designer, pushing concepts and hoping that the engineer will understand it. So things got critical in the point that, like, look, if you don't get our relationship together, we are not going to deliver the project, and that's quite bad. So we try, both of us, to try to understand a little bit of each other's. So I try to understand how a developer thinks. This is my first day at Futurize. I took this picture. This is what is in the toilet. So it's like, is the light switched on? No. Great. Be careful if you still do your stuff. Is your light switched on? Yes. Is one of the stalls locked? Yes. Leave the light on. No. Switch the light off, and there's a bug fix over there. If this was designed by a designer, I guarantee you that would be very shiny, very nice, but with half of the humor. But this made me understand a little bit like our developer thinks. Like, designers are a little bit all over the place and thinking in very different tangents. But like engineers and developers, they do have a different mindset, more rational, more options. I'm not trying to overgeneralize here, but we do have different mindsets, even by education. So trying to understand where we come from, it's super important. So at this point, I don't understand nothing about the technology, and I need to come up with use cases for this fancy technology. And we don't understand each other, so we decided, you know what, let's create some cards that will allow you to understand the technology, and I can somehow support the design process. This is Paul saying to me. So in the end, we created a bunch of cards. First, this is just a sample. Okay, smart. I don't know what's a smart beacon at that time. So, okay, smart beacon sends message between devices, stores can deliver later. So we have like the functions, the specs, because we need to think about like the business cases and the cost. So yeah, medium price and how much meters it can send information, and some guiding questions that were relevant for the engineer, but also relevant for the designer. So in the end, we came up with a kit that has a lot of different technologies, we play around with the physical spaces that we were designing for, and we had like a fancy new 3D printer, so we printed some 3D print pieces so we could play around. And me would be easier to tell the story. That's the moment when I realized that that's actually a big problem, especially in IoT. There is no framework. Nowadays there is, but back in the days there is no framework or any guidelines how designers would design for IoT. For engineers, yes, because it's been in the industry for many, many years in automation. But for designers, no. So we kind of realized, like look, the problem we face, many people face. And this tool can be useful for someone else. So we went to a couple of conferences. I took Paul to design conferences, which is pretty weird to bring an engineer to a design conference. And we got feedback on the kit, and we keep iterating. And in the end, this is what we got.
The internet has changed, and so has the way we work. IoT technologies open new possibilities for meaningful digital services. Integrating digital and physical realities to create a seamless user experience is a challenge. We created the IoT Service Kit to help tech professionals ideate and simulate IoT concepts. It's a board game where you build your own IoT service by playing cards like sensors, open data, and connected technology. Multidisciplinary teams with technical, design, and business knowledge use the tool to create connected digital services with validation. The kit is available as an open source project on GitHub. Test it, share it, and show everyone what you've made. And as you know, we love feedback.
So what started as a tool for a relationship problem, it ended up in an open source tool that is being used in many, many places and helping out people developing IoT services. And actually, oddly enough, I go to a lot of conferences and workshops, and I do to developers and engineers and designers. Designers do have a bit of a hard time with that. Engineers have a great time with that because it makes everything more playful. So we also have kits, so we can also make a session out spontaneously. And so the kit is open source, and you can download it, contribute to our GitHub, because that's also part of our philosophy between me and Paul was kind of, yeah, you know what? IoT, it's open, and we are pushing this openness, so let's not close the knowledge within our walls, and let's put it out there and let other people contribute. And that, of course, for me was a little bit revolutionary because as a designer, I don't have like many connections with open source. The design field is starting to wake up to this part, but it was, for me, was heavily influenced by the tech side. So this is how we started, right? We started like discussing and fighting, and we ended up like traveling the world, showing the kit and showing the beautiful marriage we have. So that photo is in Argentina a year ago after a conference. So you can overcome your relationship problems. And I cannot talk about Paul on his back and just go away. So I asked him to send you a message.
Hi. Well, I'm supposed to be on vacation, but then this Jesus-looking dude called me up and said, I'm supposed to talk to you about the joys of working with designers. Well, timing is one thing, but that aside, let's talk about people. Like, I would really think it comes down, there are different kinds of people. There are people like me who like to tinker with stuff, and that's what I'm good at, but I don't understand people. Then there are designers whose job is a different specialty, and Ricardo really taught me that that is a specialty, and you find a designer who's good, they really have something to teach you. So when you can combine what I do with what someone like he does, it's pretty powerful. You shouldn't think that when you're making something, it's about exercising a given piece of technology. It's about serving someone. The biggest realization I had with Ricardo is when he taught me that you should really start from a human problem we're solving and work backwards towards the technology. Of course, you both need to be there. The most important thing is to sit down next to each other, become friends, have fun with the journey, tease each other a bit, and it can be quite a pleasant experience. You shouldn't hang out with just clones of yourself. You should find people who wear thick rimmed glasses or whatever they do, and have fun. So, greetings from Tennessee. Bye.
So, that was Paul. So, to wrap it up a little bit, let's go again of the 4 points I mentioned. Like, about the respect and the lack of it is about losing your ego, is about not defending your own domain like I defend with Eric and get very offended why a developer presents me design solutions. And listen really, in the sense that don't listen to the developer or the designer in front of you, listen to the person in front of you. That person has a background, that person has a mindset, he studied that. He's not just an engineer or just a designer, he's a person with interests, a person with points of view. Listen to the person, don't listen to the professional. Lingo. Try to find a common language. It's not easy, I understand that, but especially breaking down techie stuff might be quite a challenge. But try to find a way within each project and each team to communicate the challenges. Human relationships are about communication. No matter if it's love or friendship or professionals. If communication is not there, it's not going to work. Mindsets. Well, mindset is a matter of empathy. And as designers, we are by default somehow empathetic with other people because we need to put ourselves in the user's shoes. But we also often forget to be empathetic with our teammates and to be empathetic where this person comes from, where this developer comes from, where this PO comes from, what worries them. And that's basically empathy. It's about losing your ego. It's about just open and be vulnerable and trust the people around you, especially the ones in your team. Can't help here, sorry. I plan to put a Spotify playlist, but I think would be bad taste, but we can't help too much here. We're gonna keep this discussion. So I think my main message today would be that we are on this together. Designing for a connected world, designing for the future, designing cool services and cool technology, that's the dream of any nerd. Designers, developers, anyone wants to create something and put it out there. But if your software is not useful, it doesn't make sense. If my ideas cannot be implemented, they are just ideas. So we need to work together. We need to create the future we want to see in a digital world together. It's all about collaboration. And there is no collaboration tool, there is no process that will make you collaborate better or faster. It's a matter of changing the way you perceive yourself as a professional and you approach the other professionals. Thank you.